Hey, Bankless Nation. It is Thursday, September 15th, the day forever that will be the merge. Because, David, we have successfully merged. It happened last night. We're here to discuss it. This is the Ethereum merge post game. David, who are we going to have on? What are we going to talk about? And what happened last night?
Yeah, three longtime ETH community members, along with yourself and myself, who have been waiting for this day for so long. I definitely think it's fair to say that this is the biggest event in crypto's history. I mean, there was Bitcoin that was created, but wasn't really an event, right? That was only a few people knew about it. The whole entire industry showed up here. There's already 250,000 views on the EF live stream video that me and Superfizz and Anthony were on last night. And so we're bringing the boys back, bringing the guys back in town to do what is going to be a 6-hour later recap of the merge so far, their reactions, what the community is saying, how the merge went. And yeah, man, it's a great day. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I think I'm feeling better than you, David.
Yeah.
I think you got a pretty rough night of sleep. You had some obligations for the stream last night. And what I did was actually probably around 11 o'clock, I got 2 or 3 hours of sleep.
You lucky man.
And then I woke back up at 1:30 right before the, things finally happened. But you stayed up that entire time, did you not?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. And then I couldn't really get to bed until 4:30, and then I woke up at 7:30. I'm running on 3 hours right now.
All right. So Bankless Nation, you are looking at some exhausted ETH community members, but we're also exuberant as well. Just a few quick announcements before we get in. The first is, remember to pick up your ConsenSys commemorative NFT. You still have some time left to claim that. I think only 2 hours and 17 minutes at the time that this is streaming. Click a link in the show notes. We've been talking about that for the last 2 weeks. And then also, there's a conference coming up, the Converge 22 conference. That is happening in San Francisco, September 27th to the 30th. A lot of familiar faces there, including Serena Williams? What?
I never thought to pair Serena Williams and Vitalik at the same conference.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun conference. You don't usually see that. Anyway, we've got tickets for you, a discount on tickets for you. I think it's $200 off or so, maybe a little bit more if you click the link in the show notes and use the code Bankless. So, David, we're about to get into our conversation with DC investor Anthony Sassano, Superfizz as well. I think that this event is, you said it was the biggest in crypto's history. I think the context for this is really interesting too, because many in the Ethereum community have lived in a world where there have been a lot of critics who said this day would never come, that the problems couldn't be solved, that the devs wouldn't actually be able to ship this, that they were underfunded, not motivated enough, that even if you did ship it, that the apps wouldn't migrate. And early this morning, we just migrated a $400 billion economy, decentralized economy, and it went flawlessly.
No hiccups.
And there were, did you say a total of 250,000 people? Not concurrently, but 270,000 people who watched this, some portion of this stream in the early hours of this morning, East Coast time. So this is history that's just been made. We all think on this call that Ethereum is just getting started. We're super excited to talk about it a little bit more. We're going to bring the guests back, but before we do, we want to thank the sponsors that made this episode possible.
Lens Protocol is an graph that is owned by the user. In crypto, we say not your keys, not your crypto, and on Lens, we say not your keys, not your profile. With Lens, your followers go with you to whatever social media application you want to use. And instead of being trapped by an algorithm chosen by that app, Lens lets you choose the way you want to experience your social media. Lens is the last social media handle that you'll ever need to create. So in order to get started, there is a secret code word in the show notes. Enter that code word in the Google form linked, and you'll be well on your way to entering the world of Web3 social. Rocket Pool is your decentralized Ethereum staking protocol. You can stake your ETH in Rocket Pool and get our ETH in return, allowing you to stake your ETH and use it in DeFi at the same time. You can get 4% on your ETH by staking it with Rocket Pool, but you can get even more by running a node. Rocket Pool is the only staking provider that allows anyone to permissionlessly join their network of validating Ethereum nodes. Setting up your Rocket Pool node is easier than running a node solo, and you only need 16 ETH to get started. You get an extra 15% staking commission on the pooled ETH that uses your node to stake. You also get RPL token rewards on top. So if you're bullish ETH staking, you can boost your yield by adding your node to the decentralized Rocket Pool network, which currently has over 1,000 independent node operators. It's yield farming, but with Ethereum nodes. You can get started at rocketpool.net, and you can also join the Rocket Pool community in their Discord. You can find me hanging out there sometimes in the chat, so I'll see you there. ARBITRUM is an Ethereum layer 2 scaling solution that is going to completely change how we use DeFi and NFTs. Some of the coolest new NFT collections have chosen ARBITRUM as their home, while DeFi protocols continue to see increased liquidity and usage. You can now bridge straight into ARBITRUM from more than 10 different exchanges, including Binance, FTX, Huobi, and Crypto.com. Once on ARBITRUM, you'll enjoy fast transactions with cheap fees, allowing you to explore new frontiers of the crypto universe. New to ARBITRUM, for a limited time, you can get ARBITRUM NFTs designed by the famous artists Ratwell and Sugoi for joining the ARBITRUM Odyssey. The Odyssey is an 8-week-long event where you complete on-chain activities and receive a free NFT as a reward. Find out more by visiting the Discord at discord.gg/arbitrum. You can also bridge your assets to ARBITRUM at bridge.arbitrum.io and access all of ARBITRUM's apps at portal.arbitrum.one in order to experience DeFi and NFTs the way it was always meant to be: fast, cheap, secure, and friction-free.
Hey guys, we are back with the Ethereum post-merge, post-game, hoping to get some post-merge clarity here with some members of the Ethereum community. We've got SuperFizz, of course, you know, from ETH Staker community. We've got Anthony Sassano as well, Daily Gwei, and DC Investor, longtime ETH bull. You've seen all three of these guests along on the Bankless podcast previous times, and of course in the Ethereum community. How's everyone feeling? How are you guys doing?
Everyone answer at once.
I am
Good.
doing, yeah, good. Good is an understatement. Very, very
Tired
good, I
and
think.
happy.
Fizz, have you gone to bed yet?
I have laid down. I have not successfully slept.
Nice.
And Anthony, you're pretty good on time zones, right? Like this, was this like ideal time for
Anthony is
Australia?
stoked right now.
This is it was
Oh.
Beaming
literally
right now.
the perfect time for me. It's what, 11 p.m. now, but like I'm usually up till 2 a.m. So I'm still okay for a few hours, but it happened at like 4 p.m. my time. So yeah, just perfect.
And DC, you're feeling fresh, right? This morning,
I'm feeling fresh because I slept through the night because I knew I was going to wake up and everything would be working. And
I love
that's
that
exactly
faith.
what happened.
That is the long time horizon DC investor that we've always come to know. Just you know, it's gonna work out okay.
Can you put yourself? Can you just like tell a story like when you wake up? Did you do the classic reach for your phone, see if like
Oh, yeah.
down, yeah.
I woke up at like 5 a.m. So I was up pretty early. I think I woke up a couple times before that. I was like, I looked at the clock. I'm like, have we merged yet?
What do you check first,
what's the
DC?
first thing? Yeah, exactly.
Is it what do you check first? Is it like Discord? Do you go to Twitter or do you check prices?
I'll typically check Twitter, then Discord. I don't usually check prices that often, to be honest. So, and I didn't check the price this morning, but looks like we're kind of just trending flat, which is more or less what I expected, you know?
Well, why don't we just catch people up and talk about what happened last night? I'm going to start by sharing this tweet from Vitalik that I couldn't believe the engagement on this tweet. And some of you guys are on Twitter
That's the first time I've
even
seen
more
this
than I am. I mean, how impressive is the engagement here, Anthony? It's 145,000 likes right now.
That's
Vitalik
by
tweet?
far the most like likes and retweets and engagement that an Ethereum tweet has had. I think I have not seen anything close to that before. It surprised me because, you know, obviously Vitalik has a lot of followers, but I've never seen that before. So yeah, pretty crazy.
I'll read the tweet out. And we finalize. This is from Vitalik. Happy merge all. This is a big moment for the Ethereum ecosystem. Everyone who helped make the merge happen should feel very proud today. Did this thing just go flawlessly? I mean, SuperFizz, Anthony, David, you guys were on the call. Yeah. Like, what was? I mean, what were the kind of expectations and how did it go?
I was prepared to. It's never. I never want to generate a narrative or spin anything. Like I want it to be honest and real.
but I was prepared for the unknown, and everything just went step by step. I was prepared for an hour after TTD to just kind of hang out and stall until we got finalization, and it just came. It was great.
It was really obvious really quickly that it was going well. Yeah, it did not take long at all to instill a ton of confidence that this thing is going well. What did you think, Anthony?
Yeah, the funniest thing for me was like the surprise on some of the core devs and researchers. I think that they obviously expected it to go well, but I don't think they expected it to go like near perfect. And by near perfect, I mean, I think there was only some very minor issues with some minority clients. But other than that, everything went really well. I mean, you could hear it in Danny Ryan's voice. He was like, well, we're proposing blocks. It's all going well, and we're going to finalize at this rate. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we're going really, really well. This is exciting.
So I saw Danny Ryan. He seemed to be like he was in a room full of a bunch of developers. Is that it? Were these like client team members, or like where was Danny hanging out at this time?
Yeah, he was
in Boulder.
That was Boulder. Yeah, Tim Bako was there. It was the EF office in Boulder. I think Trent Van Epps were also there. Yeah, like there was a big crowd.
There was a fair few people there, I think. Yeah.
But the location they were actually at, the basement. It wasn't like offices. It wasn't like comfy space. Like, can you share the picture that I shared in the chat? It is and that to me is the most iconic picture of the whole event. It almost I don't want to minimize it. I mean, it can look like kids playing.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was actually gonna make the joke. It looks like there should be like an N64 and them playing like Smash Bros. And there's literally controllers there.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
We've got Danny Ryan here. We've got Tim Bako here. I'm not sure who's on the. That's Trent. Okay,
yeah.
Amazing. And this is literally where they were. What were they doing here? Were they setting up for the
That was at
broadcast?
the moment of the merge, I think, possibly, when that was taken.
There's another view. I think it's from Austin Griffith, and it's a different view of the room. And you can see there are actually about 30 people in the other side of the room.
There's a full room.
But this just looks like kids playing in a room.
This is kind of the Ethereum development ethos, right?
It really is.
I think it surprises people that this type of a team, this type of a structure, without kind of the centralized top-down corporate control, a bunch of devs kind of playing and like posting things on research forums could actually accomplish what it's accomplished. I remember, do you guys remember back in the 2018 era, there was this kind of famous back and forth with like Fred Wilson, notable venture capitalists, and he said, I can't remember his exact phrasing, but it's basically like Ethereum has dropped the ball. They failed to execute. They need more structure. The Ethereum Foundation and the way that's kind of decentralized coordination is a complete fail. They need to get some real operators in there. Remember, he said all of these things at a multi-coin conference, I believe. And I think a lot of us in the Ethereum community felt it a little bit. It felt like no one was in 2018, no one was really stepping up and taking the ball to go bring this thing called ETH2 across the finish line. That was in 2018. And I think it's stuff like this. Like, if you come from the traditional world, this is not how software gets shipped.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, a couple of thoughts on that, because we've heard a lot of that over the course of the past few years. And I actually wrote a tweet this morning just kind of commending the builders and talking about how insanely hard it is to have multiple client teams working together to create and update clients on a common spec like this, moving a network that's securing tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars onto this new consensus mechanism. And the three people who are in that last picture are three of the people who really have worked the hardest to make this possible. Danny kind of being that lead project manager, if you will, helping to coordinate all these disparate teams, which is no easy feat. Tim doing the same thing on what was the legacy Ethereum 1 clients, and Trent, who's done just a tremendous amount of community outreach to make sure everybody's informed. I mean, the fact that this all went off without a hitch, and like I said, I slept easy because I was like, I know everything's going to go well. We've gone through several test nets, and every single one, we learned a couple of things, but all of them at the end of the day went pretty smoothly. And those learnings were definitely applied into this one. So, it's just an incredible moment for Ethereum and for decentralized software development. Quite frankly, the fact that we can do something like this still, I think, is incredible.
Like there's so much in this. I think this photo is gonna just like be one of those photos that you always look back on. And Ryan, to what you were saying about how this vibe is like so foreign to people that don't really get Ethereum or crypto, it's because like, where's the tie? Where's the button-up suit? Where's the high production environment? Like, where's the fancy lights?
Where's the boss?
Where's
telling
the
him what to
MC
do?
like coordinating everything? And like when you go and like learn a little bit more about like what really makes crypto tick, like all of the fact that like the marketing and the production value of Ethereum is completely unoptimized, it's because these people have optimized for the technology instead. Right. And so like we're doing the bare minimum of just like webcam on Zoom with like a $70 microphone, because I know what that microphone is. That was my first microphone. And like, it's like,
Is that a Yeti?
It's a Yeti. Yeah. It's a Yeti Nano. It's like the little one. It's like, yeah, we don't need the production value. We have the ethos in the community who are optimizing for good, strong tech. So like when I see like this low production value launch of the merge and the merge went flawlessly, I'm like, yes, this is what Ethereum is.
Anthony, I know you remember these days too. I saw this last night, and this picture really stuck out to me. This is Raul Jordan from the Prism team. And his tweet says, when you meet on Reddit and 4 years later, reduce the world's electricity consumption by 0.5%. He's, of course, talking about Ethereum's transition from proof of work to proof of stake, and all the proof of work energy consumption has been eliminated. This is Raul and Preston and they're showing kind of the activated merge. And I remember the moment that Raul and Preston kind of stepped up when it seemed like there weren't any ETH2 client teams that were going to be implementing sharding. And these two stepped up. I can't remember where Raul came from, but I know Preston quit like his incredible Silicon Valley Google tech job. And he was like, I don't know if this is going to work. The spec isn't even fully developed, but we believe in this Ethereum mission and we're going to go build. Even though we don't have, the funding is not secured, even though there's no like token reward at the end of it, we believe in this technology and Ethereum's mission and we're going to go build it. And they started Prism, which I think was the first major ETH2 client that really started to develop and remains an incredibly important client to this day. Do you remember those days, Anthony?
Oh, I remember them very, very clearly because I remember how I felt back then about this. Like, I obviously was super excited when teams like this started coming together and started actually building this stuff out, because I'd been around since early 2017. And obviously it had been talked about even earlier than that, but it kind of like felt in 2018/2019 that we weren't really going anywhere. As you mentioned, like it was kind of like a bit of a directionless kind of feelings to it. But then people like this stepped up, and as you said, like there was you replied to this and basically said there was no guarantee of funding, there's no guarantee of success or anything like that. These people were literally taking a huge gamble, so to speak, a huge risk doing this, but they believed so much in the mission of Ethereum and they wanted to contribute to that mission, and they believed so much in what we were building that they did it anyway. And it's not like, they're coming in now where it feels like the Ethereum roadmap is actually very, very fleshed out and we actually know the direction that we're going. They came in when we were going in all these different directions, still trying to decide where to go. And they shaped that. And they had a really big part to play in that, along with all the other teams that stepped up as well. So, yeah, I just remember how dark the times were in 2019, but these people made it brighter and got us through. And we obviously, the last 2.5 years have just been up and up and up only, really, when it comes to not maybe sometimes the price, but I'm more talking about, I guess, like the tech and community.
Mm-hmm.
I have so much respect for the people in these pictures that we've shown. I just, there
are so many behind the scenes that like I just don't know the names of, that put their blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. And so to all the developers that, I'm sorry I don't know your name, but tip of the hat to you for anyone that put their effort into this thing to make this thing launch.
Do you guys
Actually, speaking of history, tree. I've got a tweet that I just sent to the chat from Xiaowei Wang, who is a researcher at the Ethereum Foundation. This is basically like a history thread on the merge itself. And basically it links to a bunch of ETH research posts on how the merge came together. Do you guys remember when we were actually going to do like checkpointing with the ETH1 chain? And like we kind of like scrapped that idea, and then we did I think we evolved it once more, evolved it and then evolved it once more after that, and that's all actually linked here by Xiaowei Wang. So I really liked this thread.
Yeah, and actually for some of those guys who are around back in like 2016, 2017 timeframe, proof of stake seemed a lot closer on the horizon before, there were various re-architectures of the design to make it more decentralized and so on. But, I remember being back in 2017 and be like, oh, we're going to have proof of stake in like a year or maybe two. And then it kept getting pushed out. But over time, I've come to appreciate that approach because we've developed a much more diverse client base. We have a much stronger community. And Ether as an asset has been distributed even further, which makes, proof of stake a lot more potentially resilient. So I think it was the right move doing some of those re-architectures, but that's one of those things where Fred Wilson's like, why is all this taking so long? But it's like, look, sometimes you've got to follow this circuitous path in this kind of decentralized software development, because this is not like shipping a new feature in Gmail. This is a million times more complex than that.
Well, jumping on that, we had kind of this false start. Was this in? My years are getting blurred now. I guess that's just a symptom of being in crypto for too long. Was it in 2018 or 2019 that we were supposed to ship the first?
It was 2018, and Danny came to Reddit and said, "Hey guys, we're changing the design. The 1,500 ETH deposit contract has been scrapped." And it was a morning, because I quit my job in 2018 because I sincerely, and people think that this is a joke, I truly believed that we were going with that 1,500 ETH deposit contract design. And at that time, many of us believed it was 2 or 3 months away. And it's so easy to look back now and say, oh my gosh, you were so naive.
Yeah.
And while I was, we didn't know. And seeing that post from Danny, I remember that day. Like that's the first day I was like, he's just such a powerful leader. And I love looking back at those other two pictures. When you look at Danny and Tim and Trent, and then if you look at Raul and Preston, these people they're not trying to prove anything. They're not trying to be more than they are, or look like something they're not, to convince you to buy into their product. They are just really bright guys who are having fun doing what they're doing.
Can we talk about just for people who don't remember the Superfizz, but the original design of staking that you mentioned? Okay, it's like there were some pretty wonky parameters, right?
In hindsight, it was nuts.
It was. I'm just recalling off the top of my head though, but they were implementing the entire staking mechanism in a smart contract
as a contract
on mainnet.
Well, I feel like it was one contract.
Okay, I think so on mainnet. Yeah, I don't think there was going to be like a separate beacon chain or anything like
no
that. They were literally going to upgrade the existing chain.
It was a much simpler design in some ways.
In some ways, right? And but there was this requirement. Was it 1,500 some ETH rather than 32?
ETH, because I spent months not just for myself but also for my friends, like helping everyone be ready for it, because I'm a staker. I was ready.
Right.
So multiply that.
The plan was that it was going to be this proof of work chain. We were going to leave proof of work, but then this Ethereum, a proof of stake secondary layer would checkpoint it, as Anthony said earlier. And then once it was checkpointed, then we could reduce reliance on proof of work, because once it was checkpointed by proof of stake, it had proof of stake level security. But for something like 7 or 8, 15 minutes or so, it was a proof of work header on the leading part of the chain. And then it was a proof of stake tail with 1,500 ETH staked, which is just totally asynchronous from where we are today.
Yeah, it was using Casper FFG, right, as a finality gadget, which is what we use today, but it was planning on using that to checkpoint, as David mentioned, instead of replacing the whole thing. I remember that. Like, wow, we were naive to think that was coming.
and also like 1,500 ETH, guys, like $2.4 million.
Right.
To run a
then. Not then.
Not then, but like
it would have been.
It would have been eventually, or maybe
it would have been even higher than that.
Will be now. I mean, let's be honest. If what we, well, we, I'm not much into the price, but if our assumptions are realistic, then we're likely to unfold a similar future with what we're dealing with now.
We are going to talk about the price. I think that's important. But one person I also want to talk about who is not in this picture is this guy right here, Vitalik Buterin. All right, so we're talking about the engagement on this tweet, though, right? 150,000 likes, something like that. And I'll tell you, I mean, I think all of us are impressed with Vitalik. Consider him an important force in Ethereum. I'll tell you one thing I'm very impressed with, which is his ability to stick with this project. Out of all of the original founders of Ethereum, how many are left? And yet I just felt like this sense of like, here's an individual who started a vision for something. It wasn't quite there, made some promises, commitments, let's say, of what this thing could be capable of. It took longer than he thought, but he kept with it and followed through. And I'm not saying Vitalik is the only reason we're here. There's like, to your points earlier, there are hundreds of other developers that built this. And yet Vitalik is also the only reason we made it this far. And I'm just impressed with this individual's ability to stick with Ethereum. And I can't say enough about Vitalik. I mean, he's just been with us from the beginning, and he's remained here, and he saw proof of stake shipped in spite of all of the critics and all of the haters, all of the people who said it was impossible. He's still here, and he delivered it. This is a big win for Vitalik in my mind.
Yeah, I mean,
no, you go, DC.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's just as important not just what Vitalik did, but what he didn't do over that time frame, which has really made Ethereum successful, because you see a lot of founders with a lot of ego come in and they want to control how things are unfolding. I mean, Vitalik has surely been a critical part of Ethereum since the beginning and a part of its vision, but the way that he leads is this is coming from someone who's studied and participated in a lot of corporate leadership over the course of my career. Just the way that he leads kind of effortlessly, more by influencing certain ideas or sharing certain ideas at various points in time versus trying to dictate how things work. I think that's just been remarkable. And even for Ethereum too, to be honest, I mean, Vitalik played a key role in some of the research around it with like people like Justin Drake. But a lot of people are like, oh, is Vitalik writing the code? It's like, Vitalik doesn't do that really. I'm not saying he doesn't look at code, but he's not writing the code for these clients. He is kind of coming up with these research ideas and other people are writing them. And some of his ideas fall flat and people don't want to implement them, and he can't force anybody to do it. So I think it's just important as we look at Vitalik's unfolding legacy to think about all those things that he didn't do, which actually are what has made Ethereum really, really successful.
Well, how did he do it though? Like, yeah, Anthony, I'm curious your thoughts on kind of just his leadership style, because I think we're used to the mode of some great individual in history who creates some new system, some new platform, some massive innovation, like a Henry Ford, or more recently, like a Steve Jobs, or even though it's gotten dark recently, a Mark Zuckerberg. And the structure there is CEO, founder, control, governance decisions. Here's my vision. You do what I say. And I push it down the organizational stack. Whereas Vitalik, he's not a CEO of Ethereum. It's just this leadership style that I think is new. It's like open source. It's like crypto ethos, which is like, no one has to do anything Vitalik says. They just choose to, because it's a good idea. I think very much of, we talk about DAOs so often these days, but like Ethereum really is a DAO. It is a decentralized organization that is somehow partially led by Vitalik through sheer legitimacy and through sheer good ideas that he comes up with. What do you think about this leadership model?
The thing is that it really does amaze me how unique of a person Vitalik is, just for all of the reasons that have already been mentioned. And he's actually had a big impact on my life, not just with Ethereum, but like just to give some context here. In 2017, when I first got into Ethereum, like obviously I followed Vitalik's work and I watched all the videos that he did and I followed him on Twitter and stuff like that. And the amount of criticism that was lobbied his way back then with very little support that he had around him, because there wasn't that much of an Ethereum community back then, right? I mean, most of the Ethereum quote unquote community were just speculators buying into ICOs. So Vitalik was dealing with all of this criticism and he just powered on. He basically ignored it and was like, oh, well, I'm just going to keep building. I'm just going to. And at the time, I thought that was the most amazing thing ever because I had never seen anyone do something like that before at first hand. I know there's been obviously other examples of that, but that was amazing because that's him just still leading, still doing what he wants to be doing while facing all of this criticism. And then since then, as I followed him through the years and you know, obviously listened to everything he's put out and read everything he's put out, he just has stayed the same. Like he has the really unique ability to separate, I guess, probably his emotional state from things that he knows needs to get done. And he has a lot of people that he's very aware of how many people are following his every move, so to speak. And he's very aware of his potential influence on Ethereum. Like you did mention that he can't force anyone to do something, but he has a lot of influence just simply by virtue of being the creator of Ethereum and having a lot of good ideas. So I think he purposely limits himself, which is actually a very unique thing that not a lot of people can do. He purposely limits his own abilities in order to allow other people to take up the kind of, I guess, leadership or other kind of roles in place of him. Like he could probably do it if he really wanted to, but that goes against what he's trying to build at the end of the day, or what he wants to see built in the world. And especially over the last couple of years, he's taken a massive backseat in Ethereum. He really is just deep down in the research, and he's let people like Danny Ryan and Tim Byko do everything else. And I don't even think the term "let them do it" is correct, because like he didn't force them to do it, tell them to do it. He didn't back off so that someone would just step up, but they stepped up, and he's just kind of been like, okay, well, I'm going to do this research thing. All these client teams can develop all this stuff, and Tim and Danny and all the other people that want to do coordination can do that. So that is very unique, not just in crypto, but I believe in the world. Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of these CEOs out there that have these massive companies that they've grown. They all have egos. They all love the centralized control, and they just want to keep accumulating wealth, keep accumulating as much control as possible, and they don't give it up. Whereas Vitalik, I mean, he has a very little percentage ownership over the network. It's a tiny percentage ownership. He could have given himself so much more, and he very clearly doesn't care about money, which is extremely unique as well. He hasn't gone and bought lavish super mega mansions and super yachts and he doesn't buy any of that. All he does is travel with a backpack, which he wrote a whole blog post about, how he optimizes his one backpack, and he travels the world, right, to do Ethereum stuff, not to do holidays and luxuries. So just taking that all together, he is one of the most unique individuals I have ever met in my entire life. And I don't think I'm going to meet many people like that in my life. And I think Ethereum is extremely lucky that we have someone like him and not someone like Do Kwon. I'm just going to call that out.
Completely agree. Yeah, and well said, Anthony. You know, another thing that was going through my head last night in the wee hours of the morning was how strong the Ethereum community seems. In fact, I would say last night, I have never seen Ethereum in a stronger position. And what's interesting, I think, about everyone in the show today is we all started with Bitcoin. I'm remembering my history. Like all of us were originally Bitcoin holders at one point in time. Naturally. Maybe not David. Not David. DC and Anthony and Superfizz. I know you came from those backgrounds, as did I. And it's been interesting because Ethereum has always been somewhat living in Bitcoin's shadow, kind of the younger brother sort of thing. And, you know, number two. It's when people talk about crypto, they talk about Bitcoin. People don't know what Ethereum is. For me, last night was a milestone in that it was the first time I could clearly see Ethereum stepping out from under Bitcoin's shadow and starting to take the lead. And I think that is only going to accelerate. I think in the future, when people talk about Ethereum or when people talk about crypto, it will be less about Bitcoin and it will be more about Ethereum. Even proof of work was kind of like aping the older brother, right? You know, the way you do a cryptocurrency is the Bitcoin way, and that's proof of work. With Ethereum's migration to proof of stake, it's charting its own course. It's inspired by many of these Bitcoin values, but the little brother has grown up and is no longer in Bitcoin's shadow. What do you guys think of this?
I think personifying these networks is actually kind of useful. There was a conversation I was having with one of my friends about like how by definition Bitcoin's nature was like very like cutthroat. And even though Bitcoin was young and still had a lot of growing up to do, if you like dropped off Bitcoin in the middle of a dark alley, it'd be fine. And Ethereum, by its also very nature, a little bit like has more like chinks in the armor, has more like surface area for attack, and so it needed Big Brother Bitcoin for protection for a long part of its life. And I think as we've seen, especially in the last bull market, where Ethereum has done some unique things that Bitcoin could never have done, like DeFi really took off, NFTs really took off. This is Ethereum like growing teeth, growing claws, so that if ever anyone comes to attack it, it can actually start to defend itself. And I think to what you're saying, Ryan, like this, and that's all in the app layer really, but like, you know, part of Ethereum, but not really a part of the core protocol. And the merge, where it's proof of stake, finding its own security mechanism, aka its own weapon against attackers that is extremely powerful, that Bitcoin doesn't have, that Ethereum created itself, is Ethereum being like, I'm ready to take on the world in new ways that Bitcoin's not ready to take on the world with.
I agree. I agree with that. And, you know, as you were talking, David, another dimension of that too is not just swapping out proof of work and ConsenSys for proof of stake. It's also like monetary policy.
Yeah.
Right? You know, the holy grail, the way to go bankless, to get away from the central bankers, is to have algorithmic code-driven monetary policy. And Bitcoin did and does. It's 21 million fixed cap. Well, now, as of this morning, Ethereum has switched to completely code-driven algorithmic monetary policy issuance. So this is not only a big upgrade and a departure from Big Brother Bitcoin in terms of ConsenSys, it's also an upgrade and a big departure to Ether, the asset, versus Bitcoin and its monetary policy. I think, DC, you had a tweet that from Hasu on this topic that you wanted to comment on. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, and you know, my take on this, and I read this tweet this morning, and it kind of struck a chord because I remember the Bitcoin of like 2013. I remember a very dynamic community of people with an entrepreneurial spirit, really, who are trying to build a different kind of world. And Bitcoin was a platform that people were actively trying to build on in different ways back then. I think that divergence started long ago before the merge. But I think the merge kind of highlights how different these two assets and communities really are at this point. And Hasu kind of hit this from the perspective of, you know, being able to do a merge like this is a really big deal. Being able to not only technologically implement it, but have social consensus to the point where we actually like, you know, we can talk a little bit later about this proof of work fork if there's going to be one. I haven't really seen what's happening with it right now, but 99.9% or 99% of participants have moved on to this Ethereum proof of stake network, and they're viewing this as the real Ethereum. And I think that is remarkable that it had that kind of support moving into this. But I think the fact that we were able to make that kind of transition, you know, reality is Bitcoin is probably just an ossified network at this point. I mean, I do think they're going to, yeah, it is what it is. I think they'll hard fork at some point to implement tail inflation. That's just my point of view, because you're going to need it when the security subsidy runs out. But no one there is really pushing the bar forward like they were for a long time back in the early 2010s. And all of those people, or a lot of them, have moved on to Ethereum and also to other places from there. And so I think that's just where we're at. But I'm glad these forward thinkers are in Ethereum. I don't think our work is done quite yet on layer one. And of course, we're building on subsequent layers also.
You're muted, Ryan.
And this is Hasu making the comment that he said, the merge has only convinced me further that the intellectual state of the Bitcoin community is truly in shambles.
Oof.
The high quality people who remain, BitMEX research, are mostly covering Ethereum now. I still love Bitcoin very much and hope for a restorative movement. And Hasu, of course, big Bitcoiner. And I think in some other tweets I read from him this morning, he talks about how he sort of, abandoned Bitcoin because the community wasn't interested in being intellectually honest with the problems in front of it. And now it's interesting, he's kind of joined the Ethereum community and other blockchains in fighting MEV and being very explicit about the MEV problems that faces in the future. There's another element that I think we can bring into this conversation of like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but also like energy reduction. I think Antipro's synthesis surfaced this in somewhere in his timeline. I saw this. I had no idea, but this is a tweet from Hal Finney, of course, very involved in the early Bitcoiner days. I mean, some people think he was actually Satoshi.
This tweet is from 2009.
This is a tweet from
January 2009.
Yeah, wow. 2009. Hal Finney, who has passed away since, says this: thinking about how to reduce CO2 emissions from a widespread Bitcoin implementation. In January of 2009, Hal Finney, one of the chief architects, maybe Satoshi himself, who knows, involved in the team, something like this, was thinking about how to exit proof of work, or how at least to make proof of work less energy intensive. And what's interesting to me is 13 years later, I think we just did. Ethereum has really taken some of the torch from Bitcoin in pushing this industry forward. Anthony, do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, I mean, for sure. I think, it's kind of funny because the way I think about this industry, obviously Bitcoin came first, but I don't think that it has to be Bitcoin, right? I don't think Bitcoin has to be the thing that is the number one, not in terms of market cap, just market cap, but like in terms of the flag bearer of the industry, just because it was first. I think that what Bitcoin brought was the idea of a network like a Bitcoin, like an Ethereum, like a whatever else. And then we battle those ideas out in the free market, right? Networks battle it out, and then communities battle it out too. Not literally, but on Twitter and stuff like that, right? And we just kind of have the best technology in the long run that wins. And one part of becoming one of the, I guess, best technologies in crypto would be doing something like this. And how saw this? I mean, January 2019, like was like basically at the start of Bitcoin, or the start of this whole industry, and he was already talking about this. Like there was not even any concern over energy use of Bitcoin because like it wasn't even like it was nothing, right? Your toaster would use more energy, but he was already thinking about it because he could see in the future that if this thing got big, it would result in these massive mining farms that we see today, right? That use so much energy and that contribute so much kind of like so many CO2 emissions. So for him to have that foresight is amazing, but I think that it doesn't just apply to Bitcoin. It applies to the whole industry. And I think that Bitcoin's just that idea that really kicked it all off. But as Antiprosynthesis says in another tweet, Ethereum is the execution, right?
Bill, the tweet is Bitcoin was the idea, Ethereum is the execution. And that tweet is just so good. Because there was this original idea that like if it's a good idea, it will eventually become built on Bitcoin. And that idea is slowly becoming true. This is what the roll-up centric roadmap to Ethereum is. Is it a good idea? Just plug it into Ethereum, because that's what a roll-up centric roadmap is for. And so like Ethereum is actually executing on that, like so many of the original ideas that Bitcoin has.
Can I talk about the role of leadership in all of this?
100%.
That Satoshi was ahead of his time. And reading what he was writing on Bitcoin Talk at the time, reading what he was talking about to the community was technology first. It was forward moving. And for whatever reason, whether Hal was Satoshi or not, Satoshi took a backseat and said the community is going to have to do its thing. And you can see at that time, Bitcoin lost leadership, and it kind of just never found the right values. And it for all intents and purposes, it it became a dumpster fire. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it didn't evolve. And then you have a leader like Vitalik, who he didn't choose to be a benevolent dictator. He chose to be a guide who gives the Ethereum concept away every day. Every day he's giving power to other people and empowering them while still guiding the community. He doesn't have any real control, but he also didn't disappear and let the community crash and burn. And so that's the real difference, that we have now many leaders in Ethereum who have grown in Vitalik's vision of like what Ethereum ought to be. So rather than one leader disappearing and saying you don't have any leadership, we have one leader who grows other leaders so that we have lots of community leadership and lots of positive direction for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. It really reminds me of kind of that archetype of, like a George Washington type figure who's just like, after, 2 successive terms serving as president, successful general, founder of the country, people wanted him to stay even longer. And he said, no,
got shot in a war.
Yeah. I need to pass the torch, right? I need to allow other leaders to kind of step up. And I do think, to your point, all this conversation about Bitcoin and Ethereum is there was a type of fork into Ethereum at the social layer. This was not a hard fork. This was not a technical fork. Ethereum is its own kind of technology and platform. But a lot of the original community that embraced a lot of the Bitcoiner values and just saw those expressed in different ways migrated and moved to Bitcoin. I think that's why we've seen some of the stagnation on the Bitcoin community side. There's almost been a brain drain. But let's talk about this really quick before we have to cut to break, and then we'll get to some prices talk. This is a tweet from Vitalik, who is quoting Justin Drake, who says, "The merge will reduce worldwide electricity consumption by 0.2%. Now, I haven't looked at all of the facts and figures behind this. I do know that Justin Drake tends to back up any numbers that he is quoting with some excellent facts and figures and some sources. This is something to dig into. There's no question whether it's 0.1% or 0.2% or 0.5%, that there's been a massive reduction in energy use from migrating from proof of work. There's also no question that energy use seems to be the thing that mainstream cares about most, at least mainstream media, in terms of their reporting, their negative reporting on crypto. Think of the gamers angry about NFTs using energy and killing the environment, these sorts of things. Now all of that is gone. What do you make of this? Like, what happens in the aftermath here? What do you think, DC?
Well, I think that it's a very notable achievement, because we all know that proof of work is suboptimal in the sense of it consumes a lot of electricity that is not directly used for a productive purpose. Now, securing the blockchain is certainly productive, but the calculations that are involved aren't necessarily adding any value beyond, everybody kind of trying to do the same kind of math problem all at once. So I think shifting into this proof of stake model, which is a lot greener, is going to have a big impact on the industry. But I do want to talk about proof of work for just a second, because I know this is something that we're seeing more attention on in legislative circles and policymaker circles. We've even seen the White House do a report on the environmental impacts of proof of work mining. And I just want to be clear, because I think as an Ethereum community, it's important for us to think about these things also. Look, proof of work is far from the most optimal consensus mechanism, in my opinion, but I also don't think the government should be telling people how they can use energy that they are paying for, or shouldn't tell people how they should use that energy, because we all know that could just be a thinly veiled attack on proof of work as a consensus mechanism, and they could come for proof of stake next. Governments could make running a node illegal. I'm hoping that they don't do that. I'm certainly hoping the US government doesn't do that, but we need to be cognizant of that. But I think that from a narrative perspective, a lot of things are going to change for Ethereum now, because one of the biggest criticisms, certainly against NFTs from artists, and I talk with a lot of artists, and we get into big fights on Twitter about, like, these are non-NFT artists who would basically say, I will never create an NFT because it uses all this energy, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd be like, well, we're transitioning to proof of stake. Do you want to learn more about it? And a lot of them would tell me to go take a hike. A couple of them would try to listen. Well, now it's actually happened. So I think at least that excuse has been taken off the table. Now, do I expect a big influx of people into NFTs and into crypto and artists now that we are on green proof of stake? I think they'll probably find another reason to say they don't like this stuff, to be perfectly honest. That's okay. But I think, like, you know what, we've done our part. And I think moving to, and not only that, there's a lot of reason to believe that economic security through proof of stake is going to be more secure than proof of work also. And so I think that's also really powerful. And also really powerful is that we've created a much better incentive alignment, because stakers who are each staking their ETH have a much more tangible connection to the long-term performance of Ether as an asset and the security of the network than miners do, who are basically mining so they could sell that Ether in a lot of cases to pay for OPEX.
Can I follow that? Yeah. I just what DC said is so accurate that validators, operators have this close connection to the health and security of the network, and I can't let go of this message that we need to take that responsibility to heart and not give our Ether to third parties who have no connection to your coins. That is, you know, if someone runs an ad and says, I will take your coins and stake them for you. So maybe, you know, you give them your Ether and they're staking it and you're making money and you're happy, but you don't know what they're voting with those ETH. Are they voting to censor transactions? Are they voting to shape the network in a way that we as a community don't agree with? And that inherently erodes the value of Ethereum. By running a validator in your home, by being close to those Ether, by having them right behind you like Anthony does, you have an intimate relationship with the network, with the security of the network, with the value of the network. And you're not trying to outsource that to someone in hopes of a get-rich-quick scheme.
I think really this energy consumption is another just symptom of centralization, right? Because if we have these pockets of energy consumption, what that really means is that, like, there aren't individuals there. Like, there are these like centralized parts of this world that are consuming a ton of energy. And I've got some lights in my apartment, and whenever I like have my AC and the lights turn on, my circuit breaker pops. There's no way I can like host a mining farm in my apartment. That's just not going to work. And so the combination of like deleting the energy consumption as part of the consensus mechanism is synonymous with like adding to the decentralization of security. And so like now I can take part in network consensus inside the comfort of my own home and not pop my circuit breaker. And I think that's like an important thing to draw out. It's like one of the main reasons why we're doing this whole like merge thing in the first place. Ryan, you said like, and like we all are witnessing like mainstream media talk about how there's this Ethereum upgrade that's going to reduce energy consumption by 99%. And like, they're totally right. But like, that's what they're talking about. And all the Ethereum people are like, yeah, but we're also like reducing issuance by 90%. Like, you guys forgot about that though. But like, it's just the thing that the mainstream media like latches on to the most. And I haven't really seen people talk about this connection, but I do find it interesting that the timing of this is Ethereum is reducing global energy consumption by 0.2% in the middle of an energy crisis in Europe. Like, that juxtaposition is really interesting to me. No one's really drawn that connection, but like, of all times to kill energy consumption, like, this is kind of a nice time to do that. And so I'm wondering if I ever see any sort of like mainstream media draw those two connections. So guys, I wanted to actually turn this conversation back into the world of proof of stake and where Ethereum is going next and what this really means for Ethereum at large. And also we got to get into the charts and the prices because I want to talk about my ETH BTC trade and a few other things as well. So we're going to pull up some charts next as soon as we get back from some of these fantastic sponsors that make the show possible. Juno is bringing crypto-friendly banking straight into your checking account. With Juno, you can send money from your Juno checking account straight onto a layer 2, like Polygon, Optimism, Arbitrum, and they have ZK Sync and Starknet support on their way. You can skip the ACH wait times, you can skip all the gas fees, and go straight from your checking account to an Ethereum layer 2 in seconds. Inside Juno, you can buy and sell crypto with $0 fees, and your Juno checking account comes with a metal MasterCard that gives you up to 5% cash back on your spending. Juno is also giving you $10 cash back on your your first crypto deposit and $100 when you set up a direct deposit. This ad just writes itself, so go sign up at juno.finance/bankless. ZK Sync is an Ethereum Layer 2 network that is pushing the frontier of high-performance blockchains that don't compromise on security or decentralization. ZK Sync has combined the power of zero-knowledge rollups and the Ethereum virtual machine, enabling developers to build the greatest Web3 projects possible, ones we haven't even seen yet. Crypto needs its killer applications to onboard the world, but crypto killer apps need ZK Sync as a platform to build on first. It's generally accepted that zero-knowledge rollups are the conclusion of crypto blockchain scaling technology, and ZK Sync is leading the charge into the final frontier of crypto economics. So if you're a developer who wants to build your app on a future-proof foundation, which gives your users the best UX possible, check out ZK Sync's website at zksync.io. And yes, there's also going to be a token, so give them a follow on Twitter too, at ZKSync. The Brave browser is the user-first browser for the Web3 internet, with over 60 million monthly active users. And inside the Brave browser, you'll find the Brave Wallet, the secure multi-chain crypto wallet built right into the browser. Web3 is freedom from big tech and Wall Street, more control and better privacy, but there's a weak point in Web3, your crypto wallet. And most crypto wallets are browser extensions, which can easily be spoofed. But the Brave Wallet is different. No extensions are required, which gives Brave browser an extra level of security versus other wallets. Brave Wallet is your secure passport for the possibilities of Web3, and supports multiple chains, including Ethereum and Solana. You can even buy crypto directly inside the wallet with Ramp. And of course, you can store, send, and swap your crypto assets, manage your NFTs, and connect to other wallets and DeFi apps. So whether you're new to crypto or you're a seasoned pro, it's time to ditch those risky extensions, and it's time to switch to the Brave wallet. Download Brave at brave.com/bankless and click the wallet icon to get started. And we are back with the community reactions post-merge. Merge went flawlessly, ETH price flat. Is anyone surprised by that, or is that kind of what we expected here? Anthony, what's your take?
I'm not surprised at all. I don't know. I've seen some people on Twitter say they're surprised, and they're like, in both directions. Some people were expecting some like sell the news event, right? And other people were expecting some kind of like immediate pump because of all these things that we've talked about, like the issuance reduction and stuff like that. But I've personally never shown up to like that. I personally always said that it is a longer term thing. I mean, we're all long term guys on the call here, and we try to kind of bestow that upon our own communities. But I think that when you look at, I don't know, traders and stuff like that, they're probably disappointed because traders love volatility because that's where they make their money. And there wasn't really any volatility. So they're probably like, oh, okay, well, what do I do now?
So
right? Like, what do I do with my hands?
There was no volatility at all. The thing was like as solid as a rock. Do you think if the merge had like hiccups or had like gone wrong, whatever that means, do you think we would have dumped?
I don't know. Maybe there would have been an attempt at a dump because the traders would be like, oh, I'm just going to market sell because, we'll create a narrative that there's panic and then they'll liquidate some shorts and things like that. But I think we're just in such a deep bear market that there really isn't anyone left except the same old traders who are just like trying to outsmart the other traders. And it's kind of like if you're sitting at a table with all professional poker players, like you're not really going to get inch much alpha out of that or inch much kind of like, what's the term I'm looking for? I guess profit out of that, so to speak. Yeah. Hedge. Yeah. So
this does seem to imply that the market was expecting the merge to go well. I mean, it kind of has to imply that, right? Because we're flat and the market's like, yep, that's kind of what we expected. If the market was not anticipating a successful merge, you would have expected to see some sort of price bump. But we are just flatter than flat. Like it's a completely normal day for ETH.
Yeah, we had already done. We already did the merge maneuvers. We did Bellatrix. So
that was the market confidence and kind of the run up from there. July was as a result of these test nets. And I mean, if so, that makes me kind of bullish on the market because the market's kind of dumb in crypto generally. Yeah. And that's a very informed market. If they're actually watching test nets and pricing that in and just being like, yep, we expect, I mean, all of us on this, on the show thought with 95% certainty that or even higher, I think for many of us, that the merge was going to be successful. But my impression was the market didn't believe that a whole bunch of people expected this to crash and burn or just never happen.
You can just see it from like Twitter polls and Twitter activity that there's a lot of people who would like out there who are just like, in a different tribe other than Ethereum. They're in the Bitcoin tribe. They're in like an ETH killer tribe. And they're like, yeah, Ether's going to crash post-merge. Like, granted, even though, like, I mean, this crypto is tribal, this is how this works. It is still kind of hard to imagine that there's people with like cash in hand saying like, you know what I'm going to do? Buy after the merge. Like, I don't really imagine there's a significant population of these types of people out there.
I think, like, if people always talk about pricing in and where you can see it priced in, I think on the ETH BTC ratio is where it actually got priced in rather than ETH USD. Because I'll share the chart here if I can get it up. It's that one. People should be able to see that.
Yeah.
Let me just adjust this here. So you can see ETH BTC, right? Like when the bear market really started getting going in like May with all the collapse of the Terras and the 3RS Capital and all that sort of stuff, right? Like this collapsed, the ETH BTC ratio, and it was going down a lot because that's what it does during bear markets, right? Like it's traditionally what it has done. But then I think around June, July-ish, like we were doing those test nets, right? We were doing the Shadow Fox and everything seemed like it was going really well for the merge. And I think the market started pricing it in here at that point. And also the USD went up, but that was just, I guess, like a correlation to, I think, the stock market and things like that, right? After we had gone down for so long, inevitably it gets to a point where the only direction really is up. So I think that it was more priced in here on the ratio, and the ratio is in actually a very, very strong position traditionally, like historically, rather than the USD price. Now, in terms of like a long-term pricing in, I mean that, like I'm a long-term guy. I've always buy ETH for the long term. Like that's just my thing. I don't think so. Like as you said, David, like no one was waiting who was already in crypto and already understood the merge. No one was just waiting for the merge to happen and be like, I'm going to go buy all the ETH now. No, right. What's going to happen is over time, Ethereum is going to grow as a network. There's going to be more participants, right? The wider participants are going to wisen up to Ethereum's structural flow change, as Hal Press has talked about, and it'll play out over the months and years. But to expect like a pretty big price movement, like a day, a week after the merge, I don't think is the right expectation to have.
But here's the thing, Anthony. What you said makes so much sense and is so rational that I don't trust it. Because it's like crypto doesn't trade efficient. It doesn't price in the right information. I mean, maybe it's starting to. Maybe that's the lesson that we're kind of learning during the bear market, where we've just had a blow off the top, and most of kind of the crazy narrative traders are sort of out right now. Maybe this is a smarter market kind of reacting to these fundamentals. If so, that's bullish, but I almost don't trust it.
If I want to put on the market is dumb cap, maybe we could actually say like we're actually too soon. Like there's a lot of people in crypto who, they get their identity tied up in crypto. I'm one of them. But like other people have their identity on the anti-ETH side of things. And to watch Ethereum go through the successful merge, and really one of the most bullish things about this whole event is that it is the largest thing that Ethereum promised that it now actually has delivered. And so at this phase in Ethereum's life cycle, the onus of Ethereum doesn't ship now is on the responsibility of the people that don't think Ethereum can ship. We shipped EIP 1559. We are shipping scaling on layer 2s. We've shipped proof of stake. Like, what do you think? Like, data sharding is the last thing we haven't shipped. Are you really going to get bet against Ethereum now? And so I think some people are just going to dig in and they are just going to be in their crypto tribes forever. Some other people are going to take a moment to reflect and reconsider Ethereum's commitments to its promises and its Ethereum's roadmap. And this doesn't happen the 7 hours after the merge. This happens a few days, maybe a few weeks. And I think that actually does align with a little bit of like the merge has never been this like God candle inducing catalyst event. It's always a slow burn. Like every single day, Ether doesn't get sold now as a result of proof of work. And so as the day goes on, like we like today we'll add on 13,000 ETH that doesn't get minted and sold, and tomorrow we'll add on another 13,000 ETH that doesn't get minted and sold, and the next day we'll do it again. And so like that doesn't show up on day one. Maybe that doesn't even show up on month one. I hope it shows up at least on year one, but maybe even not at that point. But like looking at the crypto market cycles, like the way that these market cycles have always worked is like you have a bad bear market, maybe you have a flat phase, and then you have a year of like up only, but it's the quiet up only. It's the up only that no one's paying attention to unless you're in the crypto market to begin with. And that year of up only starts to crescendo into a bull market for the next year after that. And I think it's rational to say that this is the start of the quiet year of up only.
DC, we want to get to you in a way in, but first I think Fizz has to say goodbye. He's got some family obligations, and he's been on the streams for what seems like 24 hours straight. So thanks for joining us this morning.
I was so glad to be here. I literally told my family, I was like, tomorrow morning, I'm taking a break. And then, well, okay, one more podcast, then I'm taking a break.
Well, this, I hope, is the last one. And I've heard that you've got some like well-needed vacation, like some step away from the screen ahead of you. So
I'm uninstalling. Like I'm ready to go offline, cold turkey. So I love you guys. I'll miss you guys, and I'll see you guys around November.
All right, we'll hold down the
November?
maybe tonight. Yeah, November 1st is my target return. But you know, I can't do it. I mean, I'm ready for a break.
That's okay, David. That's totally fine.
As they say, see you tomorrow.
It's only 6 weeks. Yeah,
I know. He wants me to, but I want other people to step in and like I feel like I've made a role for this decentralization activity. And I want to leave a gap so that other people have an opportunity to fill it. So that's my 6-week plan.
Nice. That's great.
Oh, enjoy, sir.
Enjoy, man.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
DC, would love your take on kind of price action. One other thing to include, a data point to include, is we have been ultrasound since the merge. It's one of my favorite websites, ultrasound.money. Supply chain since the merge, negative 76 ETH. I know there's some question of whether we would actually be deflationary post-merge or not, given the gas prices. It looks like we are deflationary. But what do you make of the price talk we were having earlier?
So a couple of thoughts. One, I think on Ether USD, so and I've talked about on Bankless before, we're obviously in a bear market right now. To be honest, if the merge had launched during the middle of a bull market, it probably would have pushed us to like 5K, 8K, 10K, who knows, but launching in more bearish conditions, I think the fact that the market isn't reacting kind of still tells me that we are in a bear market, because if it had been in a bull, you'd have seen more of that reflexivity. But I think that's okay. I mean, and I'm also heartened that we didn't dump, frankly, because I thought there would be more people trying to play this proof of work trade, like trying to get free coins to dump. And some people probably did. It probably isn't going to be that profitable. I think so. That tells me two things. One, the market priced in the quote technical risk around this upgrade and marked it as very low. Two, it's also priced in that this proof of work chain is not going to be worth very much, most likely. Because if you were trying to do that trade, just buying Ether to get those 4 coins to dump, you probably would have already sold. So I think the fact that we're mostly flat just shows that there's not much remarkable to say there. And I think we are still in a bear thing. Pricing can always get worse, but I don't think that's a reflection on the fundamentals that proof of stake has improved. I think the ETH BTC chart is actually more interesting, as Anthony had up, because I think it's too early to use words like regime change, but the fact that Ether has made those kinds of gains against Bitcoin during a bear market is actually extremely unusual.
Unprecedented.
You don't really see that very often. So I think that's what the market is saying is it's expressing a preference for the types of innovation that Ethereum is bringing and for the long-term value that Ether is bringing to the ecosystem. So in going back to this, the burn chart, if you will, and I think it's ultrasound.money where you can view that. But it kind of shows how much Ether has been burned since we moved into, and it's not how much Ether has been burned, but so first things first, in the new consensus mechanism and proof of stake, issuance to validators or to stakers is about 1/8 of what was being paid to miners. Okay. So you're having 1/8 as much Ether being paid out to those stakers as being paid to miners. Number one. Number two, at least for now, those stakers can't sell because transactions are not enabled on the beacon chain, right? But eventually they will be. But miners were dumping a lot of their earned rewards. So not only have the rewards declined, but right now they aren't being sold on top of that. But irrespective of that, as most people know through EIP 1559, we introduced fee burning into the protocol. So for every transaction that a user submits, the transaction fees that are paid to the network actually get burned rather than being paid to the miners and now the stakers. And the stakers are just getting paid out of new issuance. So when you have more transaction volume than Ether that is being issued, that results in this negative burning, if you will. So right now we're pretty equivalent. It's not like a ton of Ether is being burned, but the fact that we're not issuing, that we're net not increasing, I think is actually really important too. And I think over time, this mechanism is going to ebb and flow, Ryan, as you know, sometimes you're going to have more Ether that's being burned. Sometimes it's going to be less Ether that is being burned. But it wouldn't surprise me if we never really meaningfully go above the current supply of Ether ever again. If you assume, normal network operating conditions. So basically, Ether has implemented what is very likely to act as a hard cap or even a deflationary mechanism without the restrictions and the difficulties that a hard cap introduces. I don't think the market is going to be able to price something like that in yet. I think even the talking heads on CNBC, they probably don't understand this yet. But when a year passes and the supply of Ether has not increased, they're going to be like, oh, what happened? And then they're going to look back on it and they're going to be like, oh, we've got this mechanism. It's actually more sustainable than a Bitcoin style hard cap. So I think the narrative is really going to take time to evolve. It's not an immediate price driver, but over 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years, I wrote some tweets this morning talking about how I think this is actually the birth of Ether as a global macro asset, to be perfectly honest. I think it's that important. I think it's that important that this is going to turn Ether into a really desirable asset that people are going to take 100 times more seriously than they did before the move to proof of stake.
I remember when I was pre-crypto days, I would hear something about Bitcoin on the news, and then about 6 months, a year later, I would hear another thing of oh, Bitcoin just crossed $1,000 for the first time. And I feel like this is going to be one of those moments for Ethereum where a lot of people right now are hearing, oh, Ethereum just merged and it isn't reducing energy. And then fast forward 1-2 years later and Ethereum breaks all time highs. And then oh, that Ethereum thing that I remember did that thing that one time. That's going to be a lot of people. And because that kind of seems to be the pattern that works out. And as we come to the end tail of this live stream, and Anthony and DC, thanks for sticking around. I kind of want to put that cap on where we've joked about how we will be able to show our kids and our grandkids hey, look at my ETH POW, my proof of work Ethereum transactions. Look at my transactions that go and date back to Ethereum proof of work. And this is of course a new chapter for Ethereum. But I really think this is a new chapter for the crypto industry at large, right? Because, Ethereum's the number 2 by market cap, but number 1 by economic activity. And that's really the bigger thing in my mind. And so I just want to get your guys' takes on what this means for crypto at large. How does this mean? What does this mean for an industry? And to me, it's really just it feels like we're now actually at the beginning. It's we can finally get started now. This is actually a starting pistol more than it is the finish line. Anthony, what's your just perception or overall gist on this?
By the way, Anthony, this is you with your grandkids right here. they're asking about the ETH merge.
it definitely will be. I think I totally agree with that. I've called this the new era of Ethereum, right? A new era under proof of stake. We're shedding our old proof of work skin and coming out as a proof of stake network, which is the foundation for the rest of the Ethereum roadmap, because Ethereum is basically almost halfway done if you take Vitalik's word on it. We still have plenty of things left to add to the network. Obviously, there is data sharding. There is the other things like the Verge, the Splurge, and things like that. There are plenty of upgrades coming to the network. So proof of stake, basically, the merge lays the foundations for this. And I think from my reading, the merge is the most complex upgrade that Ethereum will probably ever do, right? So the rest of the things that we have coming, while complex and difficult, are probably not going to be as difficult as the merge, because the merge is the literal foundation. And then we're building everything else kind of on top of it from there. In terms of it changing the maybe public perception of crypto, I think it's going to have a big impact. We talked about the energy use narrative. Look, that is a huge thing. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. I don't really care about the arguments. All I care about is a narrative in this context. And I don't think people realize just how bad the narrative is against proof of work outside of crypto. Like it's terrible. It's to the point where literally people, absolutely hate crypto just because of that. Now, there are, probably some of those people who are just using that as a mask because they hate crypto for other reasons, whatever it is. But I think the fact that Ethereum no longer has to fight that fight anymore, it's really on just Bitcoin to fight that. And Ethereum can just move past that and focus on other things is a huge boon for us. And it means that we are not put in the Bitcoin camp. As we said before, we have kind of shed our skin of Bitcoin, or shed ourselves of our kind of like connection to Bitcoin. And I really do think Ethereum and Bitcoin's paths have diverged more than they ever have before. And they're on their own, very, very different trajectories. So that's the most bullish thing for me of the merge, is the fact that like we have this new, I guess, era that we're going into. It's going to be very, very different to pre-merge, but it's still going to be Ethereum. And that's what I'm most excited about.
DC, when you look at the post-merge version of both Ethereum and crypto, what do you see?
So my thesis around what would happen as we move to proof of stake has basically been the same for the past 5 years. And I will say that I think that starting today, we are in what I'm going to call the Ethereum age, where as a civilization, we're going to be paying a lot more attention to decentralized value. And look, I think, Bitcoin definitely kicked all of this off, and Bitcoin has provided a lot of value to people around the world and still does. But Bitcoin has limitations and certain restrictions on what you can do with it, right? I do want to talk briefly about like the history of when Ethereum started, and Ether back then as an asset wasn't really viewed as a focus of the network. It was kind of something incidental that was needed to manage the capacity of the network so that you didn't have more transactions than capacity for the network. But over time, as more investor types got involved, I mean, frankly, people like us alongside those developers who also shared in that vision of decentralization, but also viewed Ether as an important asset, it started to become more and more important. And over time, I think, especially in the past 3 years, both developers and holders of Ether realize that there's this productive symbiosis, especially as we move into proof of stake, where literally the value of Ether is now securing the network, right? If the value of Ether plummets to zero, then the network no longer has security. So now the value of Ether is something that we actually need to think about. And we don't need to optimize only for it, but we need to make sure that we are thinking about it with respect to network operation. I think that within the next few years, Ether is going to be viewed as the most important decentralized asset in the world, and the most important programmable macro asset in the world. And that programmability, going back to what differentiates Ether from Bitcoin, is so important because Ether can be used as this collateral asset in these smart contracts, as we all know, and it can be done in a trustless way. That's going to power all kinds of new economy. And we no longer have this specter of, infinite inflation, no supply cap, because now we're going to have data which shows that the supply of Ether is staying flat or is declining. And it's going to be very hard for people to argue in the face of those things. It's going to be all these arguments of, they can just change the inflation rate. It's like, yeah, but if you think about the incentives, no one is going to do that without a really good reason, unless it's necessary to secure the network. And I think, Ether is now the staking rate is not going to be viewed as that low risk benchmark return for the entire crypto industry. And that is going to completely change the conversation. So to say I'm excited about that is kind of like an understatement. I think this has been like Ether and Ethereum are about to undergo a big metamorphosis. And that's only going to make the network even more important.
Amazing. Well, DC, Anthony, ETH Bulls, it's been amazing to have you and to celebrate the post-merge Ethereum with you this morning, September 15th, 2022. The merge happened. Ethereum, the network, got the biggest upgrade it's ever undergone. Ether, the asset, got the biggest monetary upgrade ever. And I think the ETH bull thesis is playing out. And we've had you guys on as a repeat episode every 6 months or so. And this is what we've been talking about. And now here it is. It is playing out. And we're entering, as you said, DC, the Ethereum era, the next chapter of this network's progress. It's been a lot of fun to hang out with you guys, and Bankless listeners, thank you so much for watching and for being with us on this historic day. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Risks and disclaimers, of course. Gotta tell you, even though we're bullish, so are the ETH bulls. ETH is risky. Price could go up or down. You never know. All of crypto is risky. So is DeFi. You could definitely lose what you put in, but we are headed west. As always, this is the frontier. It's not for everyone, but we're glad you're with us on the Bankless journey. Thanks a lot.